Every time I stopped and pondered, I wondered if I'd simply misremembered. Had he really said those words? Perhaps Mr. Jackson had merely been interested in a dialogue rather than a diatribe. What if he hadn't meant to be offensive? Had I misunderstood his meaning? Was I truly the one at fault? A person's memory could be a gunshot echoed across the sidewalk, bouncing between the brick buildings on either side of Fifth Avenue. I ducked my head inside the carriage, as did my father, in an involuntary reaction. Once the initial shock had passed, however, I quickly realized that there was no bullet and no gun to be seen either. The carriage had stopped without our saying so, and my father sprang outside to look about him. I peered out through the carriage window and was not surprised to find my reaction on every man, woman, and child in the flow about us. Wide eyes met mine, and open mouths muttered, "What was that? It sounded like a gunshot." "Where did it come from?" I asked father. "I don't know," he said. I took a good look at his face and began to fear the worst. "People are saying it came from the house on the corner," he said, pointing in the same direction as others in the crowd. Gloved hands were all waving excitedly as bystanders conferred with their companions, as well as with strangers who were now considered companions in the shared strife of the moment. "Mr. Jackson's house," I murmured, my face blanching at the realization. Father reached out to take my hand and help me alight. "It may not be," he said, but I could feel the tremor in his hand. "That's the home of Mr. Howard Jackson," a young woman said matter-of-factly. "My father says he's the biggest tea magnate in Manhattan." I glanced at my own father, who was tight-lipped, his eyes focused on the front door of Mr. Jackson's abode. I followed his gaze and watched as a young maid poked her head out of the imposing black door and said something to the nearest man. A cry rippled through the crowd that a surgeon must be called. A boy was chosen from the front of the crowd to run for the surgeon, and he shot off like the bullet we'd heard. "Should we see if we might be of any assistance?" I whispered to my father. He nodded and began pushing through the crowd toward the front door. It was astonishing to realize that though we'd alighted almost as soon as we'd heard the shot, already there was such a crowd of people in the streets, one would have thought a parade was due to pass through at any moment. "Excuse me," father said. "Pardon me." That was quick. I pointed toward a black cab as it pulled up before the limestone steps, the thickening mass of bystanders slowing down at the horse's progress. The surgeon rushed inside, black bag in hand. He did not stop to knock, so I assumed he was either known to the household or that the boy had made clear the urgency of the matter. I held my breath with the rest of the crowd. As we finally neared the steps, another cab pulled up and stopped to the northwest of the house, the crowd now keeping anything from reaching Mr. Jackson's front door. Out stepped a middle-aged man, whom I knew quite well by sight. He was the coroner who often met with my father regarding cases he was representing. His name was Leroy Hammond, and he was an unforgettable character. Tall and broad-shouldered, his balding black-haired head made his face seem larger than life, which matched the brains I knew were hidden behind that impressive forehead. He pushed his glasses up his nose as he disembarked from the cab and pressed through to the front door, knocking with the door-knocker before he was beckoned inside by a butler who matched him in size and figure. "That cannot be a good sign," muttered my father upon seeing the coroner. We tried to press through the mass to enter behind Mr. Hammond, but the butler closed the door as we began to ascend the steps. My father hid his perturbation, and merely reached up to the door-knocker and knocked. It was a few moments before it was answered by the same butler I'd glimpsed before. I knew he was the butler because everyone's butlers look the same these days. Tall, distinguished, pompous, and if the red glint to his hair told me anything, Irish or Scottish. "Good afternoon, Boyle," said father, handing the butler his card. "Yes, Mr. Green. Yes, please, come in," the butler said with a slight Irish brogue. "This is my daughter, Miss Green." The butler bowed to me in a distracted manner, leading us swiftly into the front parlor. "Has something happened, Boyle?" my father asked. "I thought I saw Mr. Hammond." Boyle glanced up the stairs and back to us. "Yes, Mr. Green. I'm afraid Mr. Jackson will be unable to attend you." "What happened? Is there anything we can do to help?" The butler did not answer, but instead said, "If you would please, wait here." Boyle deposited us onto the Chesterfield beside the fireplace and left to climb the main staircase. "It must have happened upstairs," I murmured. Now, we cannot even be certain what it is yet," said my father, removing his hat and running it through his hands. "I wish Boyle would have simply answered my question. I don't like the look of things."